If you are listening to this podcast, it means you're searching for someone who understands you, someone who gets you. You are yearning to be understood and to belong. Welcome to the Someone Gets Me podcast, where we help smart, talented, and sensitive people navigate an often insensitive world. I am Dianne Allen, your host. My roles as ambassador, author, speaker, and intuitive mentor for bright and talented people are woven into each episode. I have the experience and knowledge to educate and inspire, as I have been there and I understand your unique intensities, sensitivities, and challenges. Welcome. Don't get serious, get real. Today, I would like to start with an affirmation. On the ground where I now stand, I declare my aliveness, my sensitivity to the good that surrounds and infiltrates me. I live authentically, ever attuned to intuitive guidance within that expresses through me as originality, creativity, harmony, and wholeness. So I invite you now to say these words with me and repeat them so that you too can awaken that inner guidance. On the ground where I now stand, I declare my aliveness, my sensitivity to the good that surrounds and infiltrates me. I live authentically, ever attuned to intuitive guidance within that expresses through me as originality, creativity, harmony, and wholeness. So, friends, today we're talking about getting real and getting off of the ultra serious heavy bus, right? Where so many people get so serious. That doesn't mean there's not serious things. It means that being real has much more authentic power for us. See, we want to replace the weight of judgment and opinions and assumptions and begin to pay attention to pure awareness, begin to pay attention to our motives, our motivations, our beliefs, looking underneath. A good friend of mine always talks about the second question. Like, of course, everybody wants some peace on earth. But when you ask the second question of how are we going to achieve that, you get a myriad of answers, and some of them don't agree with others of them, right? So it's the second question, the third question. It's the deeper part of us that declares our aliveness, that is sensitive to the goodness of the world that surrounds us, like nature herself, the beautiful flowers, the birds singing, all the other beings. The seashore, the mountains, the waterfalls, those are all the parts of us that are real. They're connecting to the parts of us that are real. And so I want to talk about ways to do that today. I have a lot of ideas about it. It'll be fun to see what really comes out. But I'm noticing that there's so many people that have become so serious and so heavy and so weighted down by all the events and situations and challenges. And a lot of times people add their own judgment to it and add their own heaviness on top of what's going on. And I want to encourage all of us to go after what's real, what's authentic within us, because I think that's where our true power is. That's where our calling is. And that's where we're meant to live, really, I think, is in that inner part of us that has inner harmony and a purpose, that when we wake up every day and our feet hit the floor, we're saying, oh man, another day, instead of, it's another day. Which one would you rather have, that heavy one or the lighthearted one? And so the first thing I think that's really important when it comes to getting real, instead of being always so heavy, is the nectar of laughter. Laughter can be a nectar for us in so many different ways. It flows from like our deep inner part of our being, our soul, if you will, our deep emotions. And there's nothing better than a great belly laugh, right? Or walking into a room and hearing people that you love and care about laughing. And I remember like when we finally were able to go out to restaurants after the whole COVID lockdown thing, and I'd gone out to, and I'm an introvert, so me being home alone a lot didn't harm me at all. I didn't think. And then what happened was I went to dinner with one of my longtime friends. And we're sitting in this amazing sushi restaurant that we loved so much that has since closed, which is sad. But we're sitting there, and I remember, I don't even know the content, but we started talking, and next thing I know, I'm laughing like a spontaneous laugh. And it hit me that I haven't laughed like that in a spontaneous, connected way in a long time because of the pandemic. And it really did affect me in a heavier way than I ever imagined. And it was shown to me as I laughed with my friend. So that laughter that flows from our soul, from deep within us, is so important to pay attention to when it comes to being real and getting real rather than being so serious about external things. When we want to learn how to laugh at ourselves, right? I couldn't do that at all when I was younger. I was way too serious. I was one of the most serious people ever until I was, I don't know, probably in my late 20s. But I remember in high school and before then, and when I first went to college, that I was one of the most serious people you will have ever met. And I look back on those times of my life and I thought, no wonder I struggled so much because everything felt so arduous and heavy and serious. And now I know how to laugh at myself. In fact, I do every day probably. And I'm not in the position anymore where everything is so heavy because I've grown. There's a lot of wisdom in doing work on ourselves and allowing ourselves to transform and unfold over periods of time. And I look back on my life and I can see major shifts and changes that happened, and also lots of subtle ones. And I've been heard many times saying that the only part of me that's the same as I was when I was younger is probably my fingerprints, because I'm very different. And laughter is a big part of that, the nectar of laughter. And now I cherish laughter, where when I was in high school and before, any laughter was most of the time very forced. So now I can laugh truthfully. So how do you laugh? Do you ever laugh just like a tight little giggle? Do you let it out with your belly? Do you let your soul sing through your laughter? How do you let the nectar of laughter feed you so that you can feel more alive and more creative and more in harmony? See, laughter takes us out of our current situation for a time. It transports us into timeless dimensions. It helps us be real, and because we're not caught up, we're not snared in the narrow little tiny perceptions or points of view or old beliefs we're holding on to with a death grip, or rationalizing our way through the world or trying to justify our experience. Laughter transports us to another time, a place and a dimension where we're not caught up in all of these heavy, sticky, difficult situations and experiences. Because if you're always thinking and rationalizing and you're serious about everything, you are missing a lot of the beauty of life. Now, I'm not saying that life's not serious, because there's lots of serious things about life. I'm not saying it's not serious. I'm saying that when we walk around snagged in the difficulty with little blinders on and narrow perceptions of things, we end up harming ourselves, and we end up cheating ourselves from having a great life. Because laughter transports us into another way, into another dimension, if you will, into another memory, into some kind of situation or experience that is more real. And that is how we release the burden of this level of seriousness that causes us to have ulcers or cardiovascular problems or difficulty in our relationships. Because when we're living with the weight of judgment and with the weight of opinion and the weight of old concepts and old beliefs that no longer serve us, we in fact are negatively impacting our relationship with ourselves and with others. So it's time for laughter and the nectar of laughter to be allowed into our lives in a really powerful way so that we can begin to live a more wise life. People who are growing and have a lot of spiritual stamina, I call it, make decisions from wisdom over emotion all the time and are less reactive. And so that nectar of laughter helps you see what's going on, helps you understand your life, lightens your soul, and most importantly, transports you, helps take you over the bridge, if you will, from being serious in judgment and holding yourself down with that heaviness to being able to be real and authentic. So then you can actually live your vision. You can actually do for the world the thing your heart wants you to do, which I think is really amazing. And so we want to be real with a capital R, like really real, right? Oh my God, it's so funny. What and so what we want to do is we want to let go of the idea that when we act from a state of ignorance, that's who we truly are. That all ignorance means is that we're innocent in a sense, and we're living off a false belief, and that belief is one of separation. See, really, everything's connected to everything, and everyone's connected to everyone. So when we walk around pointing our fingers and judging others and living with that false belief of a sense of separation, we are living in a state of ignorance. And then that creates like a crack, if you will, in us, or a flaw, or something like that, where we really cannot be able then to express our authentic real self and our authentic real beauty, because it's skewed by that idea that we're all separate. Because the truth is everything's connected to everything. So if everything is connected to everything, then living with the you, me, us, them mentality is old news. Remember that your destiny is determined by your attitude and your character, where you head in life, how your life turns out, who's in your life, what happens. Everything is determined by your attitude and by your character. And it's always changing. We're always forming everything moment by moment by moment. You could wake up with a bad attitude because you had a weird dream, or you don't feel good, or you don't want to do whatever you're supposed to do. But you can shift that attitude at any time. And you can also pay attention to your character, right? And those things coming together allow the fluidity of our moment to moment choices to allow who we are to evolve and allow our destiny to show up in a way that's really powerful for us. Because our destiny, or if you want to say your vision, your mission, is always dynamic. There's always an energetic flow or a flux in it, that nothing is static. We walk around the world thinking everything, is static. We're always the same, or you've always done that, or, those kinds of things. And it's not true. The truth is that our destinies, our visions, everything are static, or are dynamic, excuse me. And there's an energetic flux. And so they're not static. They are very much dynamic. And a lot depends on our attitude and our character. I know you've gone through times, I know I have too, where our attitudes were less than beautiful, where we were stamping our princess feet or being all sulky, or even maybe had a bad attitude. And it colored your world. It colored your destiny in that moment. It colored your ability to connect with your vision in that moment, because the energy, the flow of your presence is affected by that. Just like if you shift your attitude to hope and goodness, to concepts and awareness that help you stand in the infinite possibilities for you, that allow you to be that original creative person that you're meant to be, then that energy invites you forward in that way. So it's so important, I think, to remember that our attitude and our character really change our lives and change the long term, change our destiny, change our legacy, change our reality. However way you want to look at it, it's all connected. And so I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I work with a lot of professional people, a lot of people who are leaders in lots of different ways. And sometimes the roles that the people I work with are in can get very serious. And some of my own roles are very serious because I've done a lot of work in my life where I'm helping people to come out of some really dark places and help them navigate toward the light where it is very serious, the situations that people call me about. And if I'm going to be in that serious, as in judgmental, opinionated place, I have very little to offer that person who's in that darkness. Because really, when we're in that dark place of being stuck or depressed, whether it's business or personal, what we really need is somebody to kind of come alongside us and remind us that when we open up to the sensitivity of the good around us, we can then begin to hear that little inner guidance. We can then touch a little bit of our own creativity. We can see a little differently because a light starts shining only because we remember who we are as we say yes to moving forward, right? So sometimes that heaviness, the best antidote for it is some light. And the nectar of laughter is one of the great ways to do it, to allow ourselves to laugh. In fact, I just gave a homework assignment to somebody just the other day to do facial aerobics and find ways to laugh. Anyway, it doesn't matter whether it's a funny movie or telling yourself jokes or whatever. Laughter, that nectar, is a saving grace. It helps us become more real and less ignorant of who we are. See, a lot of times people are taught things about themselves that aren't true. You know, I work with a lot of people who are gifted, but they don't know they are, or they don't like to use that word. And that's totally cool. It's totally cool. But what happens is I start realizing that they've been taught lies about who they were, that they're not good enough, or they can't do this, or they could do that, or all these things, and they're not true, and then they repeat the lies to themselves. I mean, I remember being taught that because I was short, that I would never amount to anything. And that's not true. Just because a tall person doesn't like short people doesn't mean short people are bad. See, so if we take those things, I had a third grade teacher tell me that I wasn't creative. And it was an art teacher. And I believed I didn't have any creativity for many, many years because that was a person in authority. And I was very serious about my school. And so that became a story in my mind that I ended up having to identify and then rectify so that I could allow the authentic creativity in my being to show up in the world. But first, I had to identify where that lie was, where that ignorance was. I mean, I wasn't telling it to myself on purpose, but when I realized where it started, I'm like, oh, hold on. We need to rectify that situation, that false belief, that sense of separation, that I wasn't good enough at something that was told to me by a person of authority. So my innocent child self believed it. We have to do some work to rectify that, because that teacher, well meaning or not, influenced that younger version of me in a way that wasn't serving me. So the moment I started stepping into my wholeness and standing in my authority of who I am as this original person and learning how to laugh at myself at the same time, then I started being able to stand in that creativity. And that's how it works for all of us. I use me as an example so that nobody can say I'm talking about them, but I'm probably talking about you too. You've done some work on these things and you probably laugh more now than you did when you were being ultra serious, right? And so we want to make sure that we are paying attention to letting the goodness around us kind of get into our world, right? Like not just driving by really fast, like stopping and looking at the flowers when we're walking, or the clouds. My new little puppy loves to look at clouds and trees moving and things. And so she reminds me that though I look at the flowers a lot, she also pays attention to things. And so we want to slow down a little bit and bring some connection to the abstract into our lives, the abstract rather than the concrete. Like Missouri is a show me state. Well, we want to not have something that's so concrete all the time. So abstract things we want to connect to are things like peace and love and compassion and wisdom and harmony. We want to give ourselves the chance to ask ourselves, how does this feel? Well, how does this feel? How does this event or this person or this situation, how does it feel really? Like sometimes I put my hand right over my heart and say, how does this feel? How is this landing on me? And if it feels kind of staticky or yucky or uncomfortable, then I make a decision most of the time to let it go, because it's about paying attention to that invisible intuition, our gut, if you will, to help us know what the right thing is. We want to also understand that your beauty is like this luminous perfection that just emanates out of you into this kind of seemingly imperfect, chaotic world. And so when you step into a room or you say yes to yourself and you really begin to get more real rather than serious, that illuminating energy coming from you, that presence of you changes things. And you've had it happen where you've walked in a room and the whole room changed, or you were already in a room with people or whoever, and then somebody walked in and the whole vibe of the room changed. That's the capacity to let our beauty show up in a positive way. And sometimes all of these things are indescribable. So trying to find words for us to be able to talk about it, it feels pedestrian and somehow not quite good enough, because the truth is there are no words for a lot of these things. And I think that's why I love music. And there's a lot of reasons I love music, but I think about the composer. I think about any of them, Beethoven or some of the composers I know that are current day people I know personally who are composers. And they're writing music and they're composing music. And then there's that inner connection they have and that feeling, that vibe, that part of them that is showing up in originality and beauty and composing. And that composer then, you could kind of imagine is kind of tuned into an inaudible inner sound, right? Like it's not sound through our ears, but they can hear and sense and feel the very thing they're composing. So I would call it that they hear it intuitively. And then they translate that into the language of music. But then there's the musician, right? Who is playing the music that the composer composed. And it may sound very different than what the composer was hearing. Or it might sound exactly the same, or it might have some variance. Because everybody's beauty and originality, everybody's connection, translating in this case through the music, has different parts to it. We all have different autobiographies and different things we resonate with. So the composer might close their eyes and hear it one way, and the musician might close their eyes and play it a different way. But that's what getting real is about. It's about all of the nuance, all of the variance, all of the part of us that realizes that being free in our expression is a form of being perfect in that way, that it's an imperfect world, or at least it seemingly is that way. And so we want to let that beauty within us show up. It's like shining a flashlight in a dark room, and we want to be that light. So in order to do that, we always are going to be laughing. We're going to learn how to laugh more, right? And we're going to learn how to play more. And we're going to learn how to pay attention to our choices moment to moment. We're going to pay attention to how things land on us. And we're going to listen to that inaudible sound voice in our head, that intuitive part of us that is helping show us the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our eyesight and we're going to change it, transmute it into insight, right? And we're going to do that by being quiet, maybe, or meditating in different ways, or connecting it in those deeper ways, the second and third questions down. We're going to begin to end this cycle of self-doubt and release ourselves from being held hostage. We live in a society that has taught the generations, our generation and generations before us, that we are hostage to this idea of lack of fulfillment, that we're never going to have enough. We're never going to be totally fulfilled. And you might have a lot of money, or you might have this and might have that, but you're not ever going to be fulfilled, which isn't true. And so the people who've bought into that, it's time to open our eyes and gain some insight to realize that that cycle of self-doubt or imposter syndrome, not being good enough, can leave now. That's old news. You are perfect, you are whole, and you are complete. Period. If you have any doubt about that, just go on the show notes and make a call with me, and I will be happy to remind you that self-doubt is old news. Yes, we were taught that, and we can be free of it. And then we emerge. We emerge into a world of wisdom, freeing ourselves from the bondage of human ignorance. We emerge into a life of joy, which is our natural state, releasing complicated and old grief and pain. We emerge into a more vibrant, healthy, alive feeling body and emotions, leaving behind the heavy judgments or the beliefs and the sicknesses and things that went backwards, that made us all heavy and serious. And we become a conscious artist of our own life. And so as we emerge, we become an aware, awake, real, conscious person, like an artist creating our own life. To which I say, when are you going to start signing autographs, right? Because we get to pick it. We get to choose our life experience with our character, with our attitude, with our actions, with freeing ourselves from old energy. Like I said earlier, I was so serious earlier in my life. I had bleeding ulcers, and it was really difficult, and everything was heavy. And then when I first, got a lot of help and started rectifying those old things that I was carrying around, that I was snagged in the snare, if you will, of old beliefs that just weren't accurate. And so with all of that work I did on myself, I could free myself. And laughter was one of the big things that I used. At first, when people started suggesting I would laugh more, to laugh more and play more, I would have thought it was heresy or something back then. I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. Now I'm goofy because I realized the value in the laughter, but I couldn't see the value in the beginning. I have some people that work with me that they're very serious and they're really hurting and they're really stuck. And when I suggest anything that has to do with a little bit of laughter or play, they look at me with that look like it can't be. No, it almost hurt them to hear the words because of the bondage of human ignorance, because of the old judgments, opinions, and beliefs that were taught to that person that they took on, not knowing what they were doing because they were too young. And then now they're paying the price. And so then we always need to have somebody outside of us helping us get free of the bondage. And so we live in a society that teaches us we have to do it alone, do everything alone. If you can heal it alone, just write about it or talk to yourself or whatever, but you don't need another person. And that's not true because everything's connected to everything. That sense of separation is going to make you feel very heavy, which is why all of the people I work with who are, I work with a lot of people who have notoriety, and they need people to talk to too, but they also need people to talk to and to be with them that aren't going to barter their information. And I've had several people thank me for that level of trust where their information's not getting bartered. Because everyone needs somebody that's outside of their family to listen to them and be with them and support them and mentor them or whatever it is. And the only reason why I say outside of the family is because sometimes our family loves us so much that they can get in the way of our own development. So we want to practice being radically alive. This is the last part here. And radical aliveness for me is about waking up to the realization that you have what you need within you to live the most amazing life your brain can imagine. And it's even better than that. That virus that infects us all of misunderstanding about what power really is, thinking that it's consumerism and materialism and things like that. That's not where our power lies. Our power lies in our authentic connection to who we are. Our power lies in living moment to moment, free of judgment, allowing ourselves to set our intention to be alive and come alive. And that means that as long as we're here sucking air, that we live in our gifts and our talents, we stand in who we are with confidence and authority. That's what it means to be radically alive, right? To be free of the limiting, old, serious, heavy judgments and beliefs. So the purpose of it all, the purpose of getting real, or some people say authentic, is to wake up and bring inner and outer harmony to our world, first individually and then collectively. So if we're living in a chaotic world that's not in harmony and our inner self is not in harmony, that doesn't help any. So we want to have our inner harmony impact the outer world in a way that serves everybody by bringing joy, by bringing laughter, by bringing insight, by allowing place for wisdom to emerge. Because being real is about being authentic and wise. It's about allowing our inner perceptions to help guide us. And it's about being free of judgment and all of those little tiny perception things, those little beliefs that snag us up. It's about being free of that. It's about knowing who you are really. So here's the affirmation one more time. On the ground where I now stand, I declare my aliveness, my sensitivity to the good that surrounds and infiltrates me. I live authentically, ever attuned to intuitive guidance within that expresses through me as originality, creativity, harmony, and wholeness. So that, my friends, is how to get real and release the heaviness and the burden of judgment and being overly serious. It's time to free ourselves from that bondage so that we can live the life we're meant to live. I hope this episode of Someone Gets Me has been really great for you. It's been great for me to share some of these ideas I think about a lot. And I hope you gained some benefit or even were reminded of things you already know. But as always, feel free to schedule a call with me if you'd like. I am always happy to talk about these things and whatever else you want to talk about. And remember to put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a purpose, and you're here to get real. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Dianne saying, be well. Are you tired of searching for someone to understand you? Join our Facebook group, Someone Gets Me. In this group, you will be able to connect with others who are intense, sensitive, smart, and talented. I share my insights and teachings, and you can connect with others in a real, authentic, safe forum. So join us today. Someone Gets Me.